Granny Hayes. Now the half-breeds were also led by people, two important ones, James G. Blaine of Maine and John Sherman of Ohio were the men that led the half-breeds, that sector of the Republican Party. So the half-breeds were led by James G. Blaine of Maine and John Sherman of Ohio. But the point I'm making here, in the years that Rutherford B. Hayes was president, from 1876 to 1880, he did not have much fun. And he had splits within his own party. Okay, well that'll take us then to the election of 1880. And if you have a split within your party, who does that favor? The other party. So the Republicans have a split. So again, going into this election of 1880, who seems to have the advantage? The Democrats. Didn't work out so well for them last time. We'll see what it does this time. So the election of 1880. Now, who's not in the picture as far as getting a nomination for the Republican Party? Hayes. They want no part of Hayes. So guess who might be the people they're considering for nomination Republicans? One we just mentioned. The other one, you might surprise you. What?
Garfield.
No.
Chester A. Arthur.
No, don't go on the ID sheet because we've already talked about both these people. That means they wouldn't be on the ID sheet. They might be on the ID sheet, but we passed them.
Henry.
No. Who might be one of the... What? James G. Blaine was one from Maine. So what group? The half-breed group of the Republican Party was kind of pushing for him. Guess who the stalwarts were pressing for?
Sherman.
No? Somebody, you'd be surprised. Former President Grant. Yeah, the stalwarts wanted Ulysses S. Grant to run again. So, those were the two big names that were being considered by the Republicans when this election first started. James G. Blaine of Maine, who was one of the leaders of the half-breeds, and then former President Grant. Well, what usually happens when nobody's really either interested in either one or they have difficulty making a choice? What usually happens? So let's just make this a scenario. We're going to hire a new soccer coach at Warland. And so, and I'm just making this up as a scenario. So you have one of the assistants that want it, and then you have somebody that coached 10 years ago that they're considering wanting it. Okay? And so the people that are making that decision aren't really hot on that assistant, and they just think that it would be better to maybe not go back to that former coach. So who usually gets the job? Somebody you never ever really heard of, a dark horse candidate. And a dark horse candidate is someone that nobody really thought about that kind of came out. You know who the biggest dark horse candidate for the presidency in modern times was? Jimmy Carter, peanut farmer from Georgia. Nobody could believe it. Even Bill Clinton was a bit of a dark horse, governor of Arkansas, which is not really a very media-friendly state. Okay, so a dark horse is somebody that comes in that just kind of out of the blue because they're really not satisfied with the other two. Well, the man that was chosen was James Garfield. He became the dark horse candidate for president for the Republicans, and he ends up getting the Republican nomination for president in 1880. James Garfield.
Wouldn't it be more like an underdog thing for dark horse?
Well, this was kind of interesting because James Garfield kind of wanted to balance the ticket, so he didn't pick a half-breed. He picked a stalwart as his vice presidential candidate, and that was Chester A. Arthur. So James Garfield is the dark horse candidate for the Republicans, and he goes out and tries to balance the ticket, so he's really not a stalwart, right, if he's balancing the ticket. And he grabs a stalwart by the name of Chester A. Arthur to run as his vice president. We bring his name up for a reason. Now the Democrats, remember the Democrats have lost the last 3 elections. They're not in very good shape. And they need to pick a good candidate to compete, and they picked a terrible candidate. They picked a former Civil War veteran by the name of Winfield Hancock as their candidate. It was a pitiful choice, really. Especially after you'd lost the last 3 elections. You really, really need to pick somebody that was popular. Okay? They didn't. Now, this is kind of interesting. So is Garfield lighting the world on fire either? Because he's kind of a dark horse, right? So, I mean, weren't the Republicans kind of having a hard time picking somebody? and they kind of settle for the dark horse, right? So he's not overly popular, and this Winfield Hancock certainly is, which would probably make for what? What type of election?
Draw.
A close one, yeah, close one. So 9,100,000 people voted in this election. Of that 9,100,000, Garfield won by 39,000 votes, or a percentage of 0.004. What's that percentage, Hoyt? That's 4 1,000ths of a percent. That's not even 1%, is it? So it was a very close election. Very close election. But Garfield wins. Garfield does, however, get 214 electoral votes, which is 2/3 majority, compared to the 155 that Hancock had. And as a result, Garfield becomes the nation's 20th president of the United States. So, again, 9,100,000 votes cast. Garfield defeats Hancock in the popular vote by just 39,000 votes, or 0.004, which is less than, that's not even 0.5%, right? And he gets 214 electoral votes, which was 2/3 to 155, and becomes the nation's 20th president. And that's Garfield right here.
They all look the same.
They all kind of do. Beards were in, weren't they? Okay. That'll take us to our last subtopic of the day, which is a profile of President Garfield. I'll tell you a little bit about the man that nobody really knows a lot about. James A. Garfield was born in Ohio in 1831. James A. Garfield was born in Ohio in 1831. He was the youngest of 5 children, and his parents were Eastern pioneers. Okay? He was the youngest of 5 children, and his parents were Eastern pioneers. Unfortunately for James Garfield, his dad died when he was just 2 years old, so he really did not know his father. So his mother had her hands full, right? 5 children. Lots of times those women didn't remarry much. And so he loses his father at 2, doesn't really know him, and the mother has quite a time from that point on. Well, when he was a teenager, his cousin hired him to drive a team of horses and he worked for his cousin for a short period of time, but he got ill with malaria and had to return home. Malaria was a serious disease in those days.
Isn't it transmitted through mosquitoes and swimming
Can be.
in nasty water?
Can be, yep. So he went to work for his cousin, doing what? What? Doing what? Driving a team of horses. And he soon had to return home because he got malaria. Well, it could. He drove a team of horses. Horses, if you had a team of horses, it was almost like being a semi-driver in today's world. Because what you did is you loaded and transferred goods. And he did a lot of this along the Ohio River. Okay, which was in Ohio. And he basically was a kind of a semi-driver to a point, if you think about it. Okay? Well, he recovered, and he enrolled in a college called Western Reserve Institute. A weird name, but that's what it was called. It's like an institute can be like a mental institute, a college. An institute is a place like a school is an educational institute. So he enrolled in a place called Western Reserve Institute, which later actually became known as Hiram College in later years. But when he enrolled, it was called Western Reserve Institute. Rocky Mountain College of Billings was called Billings Polytech Institute when it was first started, then the name changed to Rocky Mountain College. Western Reserve Institute became Hiram College, and that's where he went to college. And he attended there for 3 years, and then he transferred to Williams College. Williams College. And that was in Williamstown, Massachusetts. So he goes to Western Reserve Institute for a period of time, actually goes there 3 years, but during his 3 years there, they changed its name to Hiram College, and he went there 3 years, and then he transferred to Williams College, which was located in Williamstown, Massachusetts. And he went there for 2 years and graduated from there in 1856. So he goes to these two colleges and graduates in 1856 from Williams College in Massachusetts. What do you think he did after he graduated from Williams College?
Military.
He actually went back to Hiram College and was a professor, and he taught ancient languages and literature. So after his graduation from Williams College, he goes back to Hiram College, and he becomes a college professor, teaching ancient languages and literature. So he went back to his alma mater, so to speak. So he graduated from Williams College, 1856, he went back to Hiram College, and became a college professor teaching ancient languages and literature. Guess what happened to him in 1857 when he was just 26 years old? Guess what he got hired to be?
Dean.
What?
Dean.
Higher than that.
What's higher than that?
Yeah.
Superintendent?
Well, what would that be in a college?
I don't know.
President.
President?
He became president of Hiram College in 1857 at the age of 26. Very good though. You're right up there. So he became a college president in 1857 at the age of 26 years old at Hiram College. Very bright man.
26.
Yep. On November 11th, 1858, he married Lucretia Randolph, who was a daughter of an Ohio farmer. It's on your ID sheet. On November 11th, 1858, he married Lucretia Randolph, who was the daughter of an Ohio farmer.
That's pretty strange. His sister named Felicia.
The Garfields had 7 children, 2 of them that died as infants. So they had 7 children but raised 5, 2 died as infants. So Mr. and Mrs. Garfield, after marriage, had 7 children. They lost 2 to death as infants. Kind of an interesting. You know what, one of his sons, his name was Harry. You know what he became?
A barber.
The president of that.
President of Williams College. His son Harry became president of Williams College. What? Well, just let you know, one of his sons became the president of Williams College. The other son, James, served under Theodore Roosevelt as president. He worked in he was Secretary of the Interior. So his sons did some things. His oldest son, Harry, became president of Williams College. His younger son, James, became Secretary of the Interior under President Theodore Roosevelt. Pretty important job at that time. Where did Garfield serve like everybody else? Think about it. They married in 1858. Where did he serve his country? After marriage? Civil War. And he was actually the Chief of Staff under General William Rosecrans. Remember we talked about William Rosecrans? James Garfield was his Chief of Staff. He was the highest ranking officer under General William Rosecrans in the Civil War. So he served in the Civil War. Let me write that down. Remember William Rosecrans? You probably don't know. He was William Rosecrans was a Union general in the Civil War. And Garfield served under him and was his Chief of Staff. Matter of fact, Garfield had so much success in the Civil War, he left the Civil War at the rank of Major General. Okay. He served in both the House and the Senate during his career prior to the presidency from Ohio. And guess what big vote he was involved in after the Civil War? And he voted guilty in this particular vote.
So,
The grant.
No.
Oh.
He was a senator at the time and he voted guilty in a trial for who?
oh,
I know what you're talking
he's the
about.
president of the South. I forgot.
Andrew Johnson, remember his impeachment
yeah,
trial
yeah,
after
that's
he
what I
replaced
was
Lincoln? Actually, James Garfield was a senator who was one of the senators that voted guilty in that trial. Remember, it was Edmund G. Ross that voted not guilty. Remember, and it cost him his career? Garfield voted guilty. Okay? He had a very successful career in Congress. And after he was elected president, he fought not only the stalwarts, because he didn't like the stalwarts, even though he nominated Chester A. Arthur, he didn't like the stalwarts. He fought against them, and you know what else he fought against that Andrew Jackson started? What system of government did Andrew Johnson? To the victor belong the, what? Spoils. Remember the spoils system, where Andrew Johnson was putting people in his cabinet that were supporters, even though they weren't very good politicians or aides? Well, he fought against this. Garfield fought against the spoil system, got rid of it out of the government. Well, on July 2nd, 1881, as president, he was going to attend the 25th reunion of his graduating class of Williams College. Okay, on July 2nd, 1881, Garfield was going to go attend his 25th class reunion from his graduation from Williams College. And how did he get from place to place in 1881?
Carriage.
No, not that far. They didn't have airplanes yet, so what did they take? Took the railroad. So he was walking through the railway station in Washington. You getting ready to get on a train when a stranger approached him and fired 2 pistol shots at him. Okay, so as he was walking through the railroad station in D.C. to get on a train that would take him to his 25th college graduation reunion at Williams College, a stranger approached him and fired 2 pistol shots at him. And when Garfield fell, the assassin yelled out, "I am a stalwart, and Arthur is president now."
Nah.
So this guy comes up to President Garfield. In those days, it was just not the same security you see today, obviously. Pulled out a pistol in the railway station, shot 2 shots at President Garfield, and yelled as Garfield fell to the ground, "I am a stalwart, and Arthur is president now."
Did he kill him?
That's a good question. And we will tell you that on Monday. Okay, nice job today. Those of you that are working the prom, if you'd like to go right now, you may.